In this video, we'll show you how to perform a coolant flush on your Ford F-150. You can find the right coolant on CarParts.com via the link in the description. For safety reasons, we strongly suggest watching our video on how to jack your Ford F-150 safely. We advise you to check the general condition of the cooling hoses to make sure there are no cracks or leaks. When completely bleeding your cooling system, we advise you to do it when the engine is cold. To facilitate the flow of coolant, open the cap of the coolant expansion tank. Get a fluid collection container to collect the coolant that will flow out. On this vehicle, the radiator is equipped with a bleed screw, which you can access from the underside of the vehicle on the passenger side. Connect a plastic tube to the bleed port to collect the coolant directly in the collection container. You can then unscrew the bleed screw to let the coolant flow. You can use a 19mm wrench. Use a cloth or paper towels to clean up any fluid that may have leaked. Once drained, close the bleed screw. When completely bleeding the coolant, we advise you to thoroughly empty the coolant from the reservoir. Using a ratchet, an extender, and a 7mm socket, loosen the retaining ring of the hose. Then remove the hose. Using a ratchet, an extender, and an 8mm socket, unscrew the two bolts holding the coolant reservoir. Using flat-nose pliers or collar pliers, compress the hose retaining ring on the reservoir before removing it. You can now remove the coolant reservoir, making small lateral back and forward movements. This will make it easier to empty. Also, clean it with demineralized water so as to clean the impurities remaining in the reservoir. Put the coolant reservoir back in place. Reconnect the hose. Put the coolant hose retaining ring back in place. Then screw the retaining bolts back in. Reconnect the hose. Replace the collar. Before adding coolant, we advise you to thoroughly clean the coolant system by filling the coolant reservoir with demineralized water. Squeeze the coolant hose several times to help expel air bubbles from the cooling system. Once the system has been filled, close the cap of the reservoir. Start your vehicle. Make sure the air conditioning is turned off. Then turn the ventilation and heating to maximum in order to circulate the liquid in the heater core. You can maintain the acceleration around 2,000 RPM to accelerate the engine warm-up. Once the engine is at operating temperature, with the engine temperature rising, the thermostat should open. Check that the hose coming out of the thermostat is hot. This means that the thermostat is in the open position and that the liquid is circulating through the engine. Also, check that the heater core supply hoses are hot and that hot air is coming out of the ventilation. This means that the liquid is circulating freely through the heating circuit. You can then turn off the ignition and wait about 1 hour for the motor temperature to drop back down. Once the engine is cold, open the expansion tank cap and repeat the bleeding operation. Once the demineralized water has been bled, close the bleed screw. For this vehicle, we advise you to follow the manufacturer and product recommendations to adapt coolant dilution to the specifications of your vehicle where necessary. For great content, our best price, and fast shipping, download the CarParts.com app now. You can order the coolant used in the video on CarParts.com via the link in the description. You can now fill the coolant reservoir to the minimum level. Close the cap. Squeeze the coolant hoses several times to help expel air bubbles from the cooling system. Start your vehicle. Make sure the air conditioning is turned off. Then, turn the ventilation and heating to maximum in order to circulate the liquid in the heater core. Once the engine is at operating temperature, check the opening of the thermostat by making sure the hose coming out of the thermostat is hot. This means that the thermostat is in the open position and that the liquid is circulating through the engine. Also, check that the heater core supply hoses are hot and that hot air is coming out of the ventilation. This means that the liquid is circulating freely through the heating circuit and air bubbles are not obstructing the circulation. Turn off your vehicle's ignition. Readjust the coolant reservoir to the maximum level. Then, gently lower your vehicle to the ground. During the first few miles of driving, pay special attention to your coolant level, which will have to be readjusted if necessary. Also check regularly for leaks on the ground. Operation complete.